Preflighting a Skyhawk 172 model November. Walking up to the plane. First thing we do is we come inside. Control lock, if it was in, would come out of the airplane. Go master on, all the lights on, flaps down. Come outside of the airplane. We'll check all the lights. So left side strobe, it should be a red light, that looks good. Flaps come down uniformly. Landing light is good. Come over, right side we should see a green light, strobe. Beacon is good. Make sure the flaps down uniformly. Tail navigation light, all of that looks good. Coming back into the cockpit. Check the fuel gauges. Fuel gauges look good. We'll verify that visually. Master comes off. Lights off. We'll leave the flaps down. Check it against the checklist. So we would have done the initial work here. Weather, density, altitude we do at home. Weight and balance we do at home. Performance requirements we do at home. Flight plan, we may have filed a flight plan. Papers, we'll check aero. So we'll check the airworthiness here. Make sure that it's good, make sure it matches the tail number. Check the registration, make sure it's good, it's current, matches the tail number. Put those back in here. We'll check for the POH, make sure we've got it, make sure it's appropriate for the plane. Right there. And then we will check for a weight and balance for the plane. And we do have the weight and balance there. Okay, cool. We've done the aero. Fuel, we make sure is on both. I already flowed the control lock out, but the control lock is out. Master, we turned on. Flaps, we extended. Pitot heat, we would check if we plan on using it. Master would be on, of course. Pitot heat would be on. We would feel it on the outside to make sure that it's good. Lights we checked, fuel gauges we checked, and the master came off. That's the interior or the initial checklist. Now let's go outside. So we'll start on the empennage of the airplane. We'll take the cover off. We'll get our fuel selector out, or our fuel sampler, our gas jar out. And we're checking the empennage, making sure that we don't see any dents, we don't see any crumpling. Leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer. Weights, making sure we've got weights in there. Making sure the elevator moves freely, correctly. We've got a retention device here. We've got one here. Making sure that the elevator cables feel good. Rudder cables feel good. Rudder moves freely, correctly. Rudder retention there, there, and there. VOR antennas look good up here. Elevator trim tab looks good. We've got a piano hinge here, making sure that it's adhered. You can check the other side of the rudder and the attachment points here. Check the elevator attachment here and here. The elevator weight, making sure it's in there. Leading edge on this side of the elevator is good. Empennage, making sure again, no denting, no cracking, nothing looks wrong. That ADF antenna is in up. Coming over to the wings, first thing I check here is the flaps, making sure that they're solid. We don't see any binding, any metal fragments. We don't have any binding in the control rods. Coming over to the ailerons, making sure that each of these 3 piano hinges have a cotter pin in them, are firmly attached. Checking here to make sure we've got no binding in the control rod for the aileron. Checking 3 weights here, 1, 2, and 3 in the aileron. Again, just generally speaking, making sure the aileron feels smooth. Edge of the wing, no denting, lights feel firmly attached. Leading edge of the wing, making sure that it looks good, no denting. We're looking at every inlet, cabin air here, making sure nothing's living in there. Coming down to the wheel, making sure we have bead of the tire, no brake fluid. If you can see the brake pads, making sure they're good. Coming up here, we'll take a fuel sample. Oh, I'm spilling all over the place. Make sure that the fuel sample is good. It's blue. There's no discoloring, no water, no contaminants. Come up onto the plane. We'll dump this back in through the screen. We'll be the last one to touch the gas cap, making sure that it's firmly on, checking the top of the wing, making sure it looks good. Other wing, checking the comm antennas, making sure they look firmly adhered. That all looks good. GPS, good. Continuing the pre-flight, nose of the plane looks good. Nose wheel looks good, making sure that that strut has about a fist worth of metal showing. Tapping on the exhaust, making sure that it sounds solid. There's no kind of, it doesn't sound like it's been detached at all. We'll come in here, we'll check oil. And we've got, very hard to do with a camera in your hand, just about 5 quarts of oil there. That's good, that's full. Making sure the oil color looks good, it's not too dark, it hasn't been too long. We'll pull the gascolator, make sure that the fuel evaporates quickly. We shouldn't do that, we should actually catch it in the gas jar, but I'm not tall enough to do that. Making sure that we don't have any contaminants in there, it evaporates, it's not water. Water would take longer to evaporate. Close that door. Coming over here, I like to check the back of the prop. It's usually matte black. It's the easiest place to see cracks. Making sure we don't see any cracks, no dings, nothing bigger than like a fingertip in the prop. Spinner, making sure it looks good, no dents. Other prop blade, checking the same. Back of the prop. In kind of the engine cowling, we're making sure we don't see any creatures. It's warm, rats like to be in there sometimes. No nesting, we'll check the alternator belt, making sure that it feels firm, not loose, if you can see that. Coming down here to the landing light, making sure it's firmly attached. The air filter, making sure it's not blocked at all. And the nose wheel, making sure that the tread looks good. There's no big bald spots, the cord isn't showing, that all looks really decent. Coming over to the other side of the nose, static port, not blocked. Any of the cabin air, not blocked. Pitot tube, if we did try the pitot heat, we'd feel this, make sure it's hot. We've got the ram air here, making sure it's not blocked. We've got a drain hole down here, making sure that's not blocked. And then the fuel vent, making sure that's not blocked at all. Stall indicator in here, making sure that's not blocked. Leading edge of the wing, this all looks good. Lights, making sure those are firmly attached, they're not falling off. Aileron, making sure it swings freely. We're checking the piano hinge there, there, and there. We're checking for 3 weights here, 1, 2, 3 on the outside, and then checking to make sure that this is not binding. Flap, making sure it feels solid. Again, there's no kind of metal fragments, the flap tracks look good. There's no binding in any of these rods, that feels good. Checking the wheel on this side, making sure that we've got tread and we don't see any cord showing. We don't see any pooled hydraulic fluid. The brake pads do look good. All of that looks really good. And then we'll take a fuel sample here. Again, it's blue, avgas. No clear, we can hold it up to the white empennage. It looks blue, no clear, no contaminants, no water, that's good. Pop up here. Open up this gas cap. Of course, we'd be checking visually the fuel level, making sure that the fuel is sufficient for what we want. And then we, again, are always the last person to close the fuel cap. These caps are vented as well, in addition to the vent that's here on the left wing for the gravity fed fuel system. Completing the pre-flight, we come over, we check the baggage door. We want that to be locked, so I'll put this back in here. I would lock that. Take out the chocks, take off the chains. At this point, I'm coming back in. I'm checking it against my checklist. So I float it, and now I'm gonna check it against my checklist. Fuel quantity, we did that. We checked it. Fuel quality, we did that as well. So we visually inspected the fuel. We also checked the fuel gauges in the cockpit. Caps, drains, vents, we drained all of the gas, took samples. We checked the venting. We checked the caps. We checked the engine oil. We checked the belt. We checked the prop. We checked the air intake, the exhaust system. Stall indicator test, we can't really test it on a 172 unless we want to suck on that hole. I don't really want to do that. Surfaces and controls. Again, the surfaces and controls on this plane, flaps, ailerons, elevator, trim tab, and rudder. We checked all 5 of those. Pitot and static ports we checked. The gears, the tire, the brakes, we checked all that. The antennas, again, the comm antennas, the VOR antennas, the ELT antenna. We've got the GPS puck. We also have the ADS-B fin down there. We checked all 5 of those. The ties, the chocks, I do have the ties still on and the chocks. I'm not actually flying, but I would take off those chains, those chocks. The baggage door is closed, it's locked, and then we would do a final dumb arse walk around. Step back from the plane. Obviously, again, I see the chocks, I see the chains, but I'm looking, did I leave the fuel caps off? Do I have a chain still on? Have I done anything stupid? Did I leave the cover on the back window? Right, so I'm walking around the whole plane, making sure it looks good. We don't see any damage. We don't see anything that I forgot. Kind of walking as far away from the plane as possible. This is the most important piece of the pre-flight. Okay, I've done the dumb arse walk around. I've done the exterior summary. The last thing to do is the interior piece. So we'd give our passengers a briefing if we had passengers. After the passenger brief, I would note the hobs. It's kind of getting dark, that's hard to see in the tack time. I would then make sure all the circuit breakers are in and good, and then I would check the alternate static. And that's my interior piece. And at that point, we're ready to commence the startup checklist, and we are done with pre-flight.